I arrived at the office that morning in a groggy haze, still shaking off the remnants of sleep. The subway had been crowded, and my usual coffee stop had run out of my preferred blend. Just another typical Monday, until I stepped into the building. "Back already?" Mark from accounting called out as I passed his cubicle. I frowned. "What do you mean?" He gave me a confused look. "You were here earlier. Left about an hour ago. Thought you were done for the day." A nervous chuckle escaped me. "You're messing with me, right? I just got here." "No, dude," Sarah chimed in from the next desk over. "I saw you too. You came in, talked to a few people. Even had a meeting with David." A cold trickle ran down my spine. I had not been here earlier. I had barely crawled out of bed an hour ago. Feeling uneasy, I strode toward my desk, but my anxiety deepened when I noticed something strange. There was an empty coffee cup sitting on my table. My laptop was open, and a document I didn't remember working on was displayed on the screen. I hovered my fingers over the keyboard, scrolling through the document. It was an email draft addressed to my boss, David, but the contents made no sense. "David, things are starting to shift. It won't be long now. I just need a little more time to settle in." What the hell did that mean? Before I could process it, David himself appeared at my cubicle. His eyes narrowed. "Dennis, are you screwing with me?" I swallowed hard.
No.
"Why?" He crossed his arms. "We had a meeting earlier. You said some weird stuff about switching roles and a necessary transition. It was cryptic as hell. Now you're acting like none of that happened." My throat went dry. "I wasn't here earlier, David." His expression darkened. Then who the hell was I talking to? An unbearable silence filled the space between us. I knew one thing for certain. Someone was pretending to be me, and they were getting comfortable. I had to see the security footage. Something in my gut told me that this wasn't some prank or misunderstanding. It was something far worse. My hands were shaking as I made my way to the security office, my mind racing with possibilities. Was this an elaborate joke? A deepfake? Some kind of glitch in my memory? Or was it something else entirely? I found Greg, the security guard, munching on a bag of chips in his dimly lit office. The blue glow of the monitors flickered across his face as he barely looked up. "Dennis, what's up?" Cleared my throat. "I need to check the security footage from this morning. There's been an issue." Greg raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. With a few keystrokes, he pulled up the recordings from earlier that day. The timestamp showed 7:48 a.m., over an hour before I had arrived. And then I saw him, me. He walked into the office with perfect confidence, wearing the exact same suit and tie I had on now. He smiled at coworkers, made small talk, and even had that bizarre conversation with David. I felt sick. My double looked exactly like me, down to the smallest detail. But there was something subtly wrong. The way he moved, too fluid, too precise. His smile lingered a second too long. His eyes darted around, observing, calculating. And then, at 8:27 a.m., he left. Disappeared. "Dude," Greg muttered. "That's freaky." I didn't respond. I was too busy staring at the last frame of the footage, my doppelganger walking out of the building, but just before he exited, he turned his head toward the camera and winked. A chill crawled down my spine. I had to get home. I didn't know why, but something in me screamed that this wasn't over. I left the security office in a daze, my pulse hammering in my ears. The footage played over and over in my mind. That thing, whatever it was, looked just like me, spoke in my voice, and even fooled my boss and coworkers. I needed to go home. As I stepped out of the office building, my stomach churned with unease. My apartment was only a short walk away, but every step felt heavier than the last. What if it was already there? What if it had been living my life while I was gone? By the time I reached my apartment door, my palms were damp with sweat. I hesitated before inserting my key. My breathing was shallow as I slowly turned the knob. The door wasn't locked. I always locked my door. I stepped inside, heart pounding, and immediately noticed something was wrong. The place looked lived in, but not by me. The smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air. My usually messy desk was neatly organized. The TV remote, which I always left on the armrest, was sitting perfectly centered on the coffee table. And then I heard it. A voice. My voice. Coming from the bedroom. I moved cautiously, each step slow and deliberate. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to peer inside. And there he was, sitting on my bed, facing the full-length mirror. My reflection sat perfectly still, staring at himself. He was wearing the same clothes as me. His posture, his breathing, everything was exactly like mine. But he didn't turn around. He just spoke, his voice eerily calm. "You resisted for so long." A sharp coldness settled in my chest. "But now it's time to switch places." Then, without warning, my reflection moved, but I didn't. I watched in horror as he stood up in the mirror, but I remained frozen in place. He turned to face me, and for the first time I saw his face up close. It was me, but his eyes were different. Hollow. Deep pools of darkness that stretched far beyond the human gaze. And he was smiling. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and flee, to get the hell out of that apartment. But my body wouldn't move. The double took a step forward. My reflection, myself, was walking toward me from inside the mirror, while I stood frozen in place like a trapped animal. He tilted his head slightly, examining me with quiet amusement. "You don't understand yet, do you?" he murmured. "You've been wearing this life like an old coat. But it's time for a change." His voice was still mine, but there was something underneath it. An echo, a whisper that didn't belong to this world. I finally found my voice. "What are you?" He let out a soft chuckle, as if the question itself was amusing. "I've been waiting," he said. "Watching. Slipping into your place little by little. A conversation here, a meeting there. They already believe I'm you. You're the outlier now." My stomach twisted. My coworkers, David, Mark, Sarah, they all thought they had seen me at work earlier. Because they had. This thing had been testing the waters, slowly inserting itself into my life while I was none the wiser. And now it was done waiting. I stepped back instinctively, but my feet felt like they were sinking into the floor. My vision wavered as if reality itself was shifting. The room pulsed, the colors growing dimmer, the edges stretching and warping like a melting painting. "What's happening?" My voice came out strangled. The double grinned. "The switch." I staggered, my knees buckling. The walls were twisting, and the reflection in the mirror was no longer mimicking me. It was moving on its own. I saw myself reach up, no, him, not me, and press a hand to the glass. A deep, suffocating pressure filled the room, as if gravity itself was bending around me. I gasped for air, but my body was slipping, fading. My doppelganger stepped forward, and I fell backward, into the mirror. I hit the floor hard, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. The world around me spun, shadows twisting and unraveling into an endless, formless void.
No walls. No ceiling.
Just darkness stretching in all directions. I scrambled up, disoriented, heart hammering in my chest. I turned wildly, searching for the mirror, for my apartment, for reality. Then I saw it. A window floating in the void. A window into my old life. Through the glass, I saw my apartment, my body, my double. He turned to the mirror where I had once stood and met my eyes through the glass. Then he smiled, and he turned away. I pounded on the barrier, screaming,
No.
"Let me out." But no sound came. No one could hear me. I watched in horror as he walked to the front door, grabbed my jacket, and left the apartment. He was going to live my life, and I was trapped, forever. I woke up with a start, heart pounding, my body drenched in cold sweat. Something was wrong. It wasn't the kind of groggy confusion you get after a bad dream. It was something deeper, more unsettling. The moment my eyes adjusted to the dim morning light, I knew I wasn't where I was supposed to be. This wasn't my bed. The sheets were too rough, the smell unfamiliar. The nightstand beside me was the wrong color. The curtains weren't mine. I shot up, looking around frantically. The walls were painted a shade of blue I would never choose. A large wardrobe stood in the corner, different from the one I owned. My breath came in short gasps as I reached for my phone on the nightstand. I froze. It wasn't my phone. The wallpaper was different. The apps were arranged in a way I would never set them. Even the lock screen, some cityscape at night, wasn't an image I'd ever used. I pressed the power button, hands trembling. The name on the screen wasn't mine. The panic fully set in now. I threw the covers off and stumbled to the wardrobe, yanking it open. The clothes inside were unfamiliar. Button-up shirts, sweaters, pants I had never worn in my life. I grabbed one and checked the tag. Not my size. I rushed to the bathroom, flipped on the light, and stared into the mirror. It was me, but not quite. The face was mine, but something felt off. The shape of my nose seemed slightly different. My jawline was sharper. My eyes, were they always this shade of brown? I touched my face, my fingers trembling. My reflection mimicked me perfectly. But the longer I stared, the more I felt that this face wasn't entirely my own. My phone buzzed on the counter. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Hesitantly, I picked it up and checked the caller ID. The number was unfamiliar. I answered anyway. A voice I didn't recognize spoke on the other end. "Accept it. This is your new life. You don't have the old one anymore." I felt the blood drain from my face. The line went dead. I tried calling my mom. The number didn't exist. I dialed my best friend. Disconnected. I tried my office, my coworkers, even a pizza place I used to order from. Every number was either invalid or led to someone who didn't recognize me. I was trapped in a life that wasn't mine. And whoever had done this didn't want me to go back. I stood there, gripping the sink, my breath shallow and uneven. My own reflection stared back at me, but I no longer trusted it. The voice on the phone had been calm, almost indifferent, like it knew I had no choice but to accept this. But I wouldn't. I refused. I needed answers. I grabbed the phone again and scrolled through the contacts, hoping to find something, anything, that might tell me who I was supposed to be. There were names I didn't recognize: Andre, Vika, Dad, work. My fingers hovered over Dad before I pressed call. The phone rang. And then, hello. The voice on the other end was deep, gruff, unfamiliar. I swallowed hard. Dad. A long silence. Then, Ilya? Why are you calling so early? Ilya. The name sent a shock through my system. That wasn't my name. It wasn't supposed to be. But I had no idea what my real name was anymore. I gripped the phone tighter, forcing myself to stay calm. Sorry, I had a weird dream. Can I ask you something? Another pause. Of course, son. I hesitated. What was I like as a kid? My supposed father let out a chuckle. Ah, you were a handful. Always running around, climbing trees, giving your mother a heart attack every other day. He sighed. It's been years since we talked about those days. Why do you ask? I struggled to breathe. My mind felt like a tangled mess of wires, sparking and short-circuiting. I wanted to scream that it was all wrong, that I wasn't Ilya, that I wasn't his son. But I couldn't, because deep down I had no proof that I wasn't. Just curious, I muttered, and quickly ended the call. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. I had woken up in a stranger's life. My mother didn't exist. My friends didn't exist. The world as I knew it had been rewritten, and I was the only one who noticed. And the worst part? I was starting to forget. The details of my past, the things that made me me, felt blurry like an old photograph left out in the sun for too long. I tried to recall my childhood, my apartment, my job, but the images wouldn't form, like they had been erased. I needed proof that my old life had existed. I grabbed the phone again and searched through the photo gallery. Maybe there were pictures, something that would jog my memory, something that would remind me of who I really was. I scrolled past images of strangers, vacations I didn't remember taking, parties I had never attended. And then, I found one, a childhood photo, a little boy standing next to his parents. His face seemed oddly familiar, and yet, the longer I stared at it, the more I realized, that wasn't me. I turned the phone off, my hands shaking. I had lost everything. And someone else was living my old life. I couldn't sit still. The walls of this unfamiliar apartment felt like they were closing in on me. I needed to get out. I threw on a jacket, one that wasn't mine but somehow fit me perfectly, and stepped outside. The cold morning air hit my face, grounding me for a brief moment. But as I looked around the street, my unease only deepened. I recognized none of it. It wasn't just the apartment that was different. The entire city had changed. The street names weren't right. The buildings were familiar, but their colors were off, their shapes slightly different. Even the sky seemed grayer, as if I had stepped into a distorted version of reality. I walked aimlessly, searching for something, anything, that would prove I wasn't crazy. Then I spotted a cafe across the street. I had been here before, or at least I thought I had. Something about it tugged at my memory, like a half-forgotten dream. I crossed the street quickly and pushed open the door, the scent of coffee and pastries washing over me. The barista behind the counter looked up and smiled. "Morning, Ilya." The usual? My stomach dropped. I forced a nod. Yeah, sure." She turned to make my order, and I stood there, hands clenched at my sides. She knew me, knew Ilya. I glanced around. The customers all looked normal. Talking, laughing, scrolling through their phones. Nothing seemed out of place. Except me. The barista returned with a cup and set it on the counter. "Rough morning?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well." She gave me a sympathetic smile. "That's what you said yesterday too." I stiffened. "Yesterday?" "Yeah, when you came in." She frowned slightly. "Are you okay?" I grabbed the cup and forced a laugh. "Yeah, just long week." I turned away quickly before she could ask anything else. My mind was racing. I had been here yesterday. I had no memory of that. I walked to a table in the corner and sat down, trying to process everything. This life, Ilya's life, was fully formed. People knew me. I had routines, a history, and yet none of it was mine. I pulled out the phone again and scrolled through the contacts until I found a name that stood out. Vika. I didn't know who she was, but something told me she was important. I pressed call. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered. "Ilya?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, it's me." She sighed in relief. "Oh, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. Where have you been?" I hesitated. I just woke up late." "You didn't sound like yourself yesterday," she continued, concern in her voice. "Are you sure you're okay?" I gripped the coffee cup tightly. "Vika, can I ask you something?" "Of course." What do you remember about me?" A long silence. Then, "Ilya, what kind of question is that?" "Please," I insisted. "Just tell me." Another pause. Then she spoke slowly, as if choosing her words carefully. "We met 3 years ago. You work in finance. You hate the cold, but you never dress warm enough. You always order the same coffee." She let out a small laugh. "Why are you asking me this?" I closed my eyes, my pulse hammering. She knew me. She knew him. But she didn't know the real me, because the real me didn't exist anymore. I gripped the phone tighter, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Vika," I said carefully, "if I told you I wasn't me, would you believe me?" A brief silence. Then a nervous chuckle. "Ilya, what are you talking about?" I exhaled slowly. My hands were shaking. "I don't remember any of this. This life. You. My job. I woke up today and nothing felt real." Another pause. This one longer. Then her voice lowered. "Ilya, you're scaring me." I closed my eyes, rubbing my temple. "I'm scaring myself." I expected her to tell me to stop joking, to tell me I was being ridiculous. But when she spoke again, there was something different in her tone. Fear. "Ilya," she said quietly, "what's the last thing you remember?" I hesitated. I tried to reach for my memories, my real memories. My home, my job, my mother. But the more I thought about them, the harder they were to grasp, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. And then, something hit me. A single memory. It was hazy like an old film reel, but it was me standing in front of a mirror. And a voice behind me, whispering, "It's time." My breath hitched. The room around me seemed to spin. "Hello." Vika's voice pulled me back. I swallowed hard. I don't know." Vika didn't speak for several seconds. Then she whispered, "Ilya, come see me, please." I hesitated, but something deep inside told me I needed to go. "Where are you?" I asked. "My apartment. I'll text you the address." The call ended. A second later, my phone buzzed with a message. I stared at the address. I knew that part of town, but I had never been there before. At least, I didn't think I had. I left the cafe without finishing my coffee. Took me 20 minutes to get there, and the entire time my thoughts were a mess. What if she was in on it? What if this was a trap? But some part of me felt like she was the only person who could help me. I reached her building, an old apartment complex with peeling paint and flickering hallway lights. I climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked on her door. Footsteps. Then the lock clicked. The door opened slightly, just enough for me to see a woman peering through the gap. She was beautiful, but her eyes were filled with caution, as if she were looking at a stranger. "Ilya?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. "I think so." She hesitated, then opened the door fully. "Come in." Quickly, I stepped inside. She locked the door behind me. Then she turned to me, took a deep breath and said, "You're not the first." A cold chill crawled down my spine. "What?" I whispered. She looked at me, her expression grim. "This has happened before." I stared at her, my pulse hammering in my ears. "This has happened before." The words hung heavy in the air, filling the room with a suffocating sense of dread. "What do you mean?" I managed to say. Vika didn't answer right away. She walked past me, into the small living room, and sat down on the couch. Her hands trembled as she reached for a cigarette from a pack on the coffee table. She lit it with a shaking hand, took a deep drag, then exhaled slowly. Then finally she spoke. "There was someone else before you," she said. "A year ago, he said the same things. That he wasn't who we thought he was. That he had woken up in a stranger's life." I swallowed hard. "What happened to him?" She looked at me, her expression dark. "He disappeared." A cold chill ran through me. "Just gone," she continued. "One day he was here, terrified, confused. The next he wasn't. No one remembered him. It was like he had never existed." She leaned forward, her voice lowering. "I was the only one who remembered. Just like I'm the only one who's going to remember you." My body stiffened. "What?" She exhaled another drag of smoke. "I don't know why. I don't know how. But every time this happens, I remember." I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. "But why does this happen? How does it happen?" She pressed her lips together, looking down at the cigarette between her fingers. I think something takes people." "Takes them?" I echoed. She nodded. "I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a person, a thing, or something else entirely. But whatever it is, it doesn't just take people, it replaces them." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You mean, I'm the replacement?" Vika met my eyes. "Yes." My hands curled into fists. "Then where's the real Ilya?" Her expression darkened. "Gone. Just like the others." I shot up from my seat, panic flaring in my chest.
No.
"No, that's not possible. There has to be a way to fix this. There has to be a way to go back." Vika stared at me for a long moment. Then she whispered, "You don't understand, do you?" I froze. She leaned in, her eyes locked onto mine. "You are Ilya now. You are the real one. The world won't let you be anything else." I shook my head violently.
No.
"That's not true. I had a life. I had a family. I stopped, because I couldn't remember their faces anymore. I knew I had a mother, a home, a past. But the details were slipping, fading like a dream upon waking. Vika saw the look on my face and nodded slowly. "It's already happening, isn't it?" I gripped my head. No, no, no. I tried to picture my old apartment. Gone. My old job. Gone. My own name. Gone. Terror swelled in my chest as the realization hit me like a freight train. There was no way back. There never was. Because I wasn't someone else trapped in Ilya's life. I was becoming him. My old self was slipping away, erased, devoured by the identity I had been forced into. And soon, there would be nothing left of who I used to be. Vika took one last drag of her cigarette, then exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," she murmured. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't remember what I was going to say, or why I had even come here. Vika gave me a sad smile. "Don't worry, Ilya. You'll feel normal soon." A chill crawled down my spine. I was Ilya, wasn't I? I frowned, suddenly confused by my own thoughts. Why was I here again? Couldn't remember. I ran a hand through my hair and let out a small laugh. "Sorry, Vika. I don't know what came over me." She nodded knowingly. "It's okay." I gave her a small smile and stood up. "I should get going. Thanks for the coffee the other day, by the way." She watched me carefully, then nodded. "Of course." I turned and headed for the door. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me, like everything was as it should be, like nothing had ever been wrong at all. I smiled to myself and walked away, ready to continue my life. My name was Ilya, and everything was just fine. It started with a photograph. I was lying in bed, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when I came across an old family picture. A Christmas gathering from a few years ago. My parents, my grandmother, my younger brother, Artem. I almost kept scrolling, but something made me stop. Something was wrong. I frowned, pinching the screen to zoom in. Artem wasn't in the picture. That didn't make sense. I remembered that night. He had been right next to me, making stupid jokes while Mom told him to behave. I could still hear his laughter in my head, could still see the ugly sweater he had worn, the one he always joked about burning. But in the photo, there was only empty space where he should have been. A weird, creeping sensation crawled up my spine. Had I misremembered? I backed out of the gallery and scrolled through more old pictures. Birthday parties, vacations, random snapshots. The more I searched, the more uneasy I became. He wasn't in any of them. Not a single one. I sat up, my heart pounding. I knew my brother existed. We had grown up together. I had memories of him, full conversations, entire years of shared experiences. So why weren't there any pictures of him? I needed answers. I got out of bed and hurried down the hall to my parents' bedroom. My mom was sitting on the edge of the bed, flipping through a book. She looked up when I entered. "Ksenia?" she said. "What's wrong?" I hesitated. The words felt stupid, paranoid, even crazy. But I had to ask. "Where's Artem?" Mom blinked. "What? Artem?" I repeated, my voice unsteady. "Where is he?" She frowned. "Ksenia, what are you talking about?" My stomach twisted. "My brother," I said slowly, carefully. "Where is he?" Her expression didn't change. If anything, she just looked more confused. "Ksenia," she said gently, "you don't have a brother." I felt my blood run cold. I forced a laugh. "Very funny, Mom." She didn't smile. I looked at Dad, who was sitting by the window reading the newspaper. "Dad, come on. Back me up here." He lowered the paper and gave me the same confused look. "Back you up on what?" I swallowed. "Artem," I said. "My brother." Dad glanced at Mom, then back at me. His face was calm, patient, like I was a child saying something silly. "Ksenia," he said, "you're an only child." I stared at them, my body cold with shock. "No," I said, shaking my head. "That's not right." Mom's expression softened. "Sweetheart, are you feeling okay? Maybe you had a dream." "It wasn't a dream." My voice was rising, panic seeping in. "I remember him. We grew up together. He's real, and you both know that." Mom and Dad exchanged another glance. Something passed between them, concern, confusion. Then Mom sighed and patted the bed beside her. "Come sit down," she said. I didn't move. She gave me a reassuring smile, as if I were a child frightened by a nightmare. "Ksenia, You've always been our only daughter. I promise there's no Artem. My breath hitched. I turned and bolted out of the room. I heard Mom call after me, but I didn't stop. I ran down the hallway into the living room, straight to the bookshelf where our family albums were kept. I yanked one out, flipping through the pages frantically. Birthday parties, vacations, school photos. But he wasn't in any of them. My hands trembled as I grabbed another album. And another. Nothing. I dropped the last album, my breathing ragged. This was impossible. I remembered him. His face. His voice. The way he used to tease me, the way he always stole the last slice of pizza when we were kids. I remembered his stupid jokes, the way he would talk too loud when he was excited, the way he... My thoughts faltered. Something was wrong. I could remember moments with him, but they felt hazy, like recalling a dream after waking up. The details were slipping, unraveling at the edges. No, I clenched my fists, shutting my eyes tight. He was real. He was real. He was real. I needed proof. I ran to my room and grabbed my phone. There had to be something, a message, a call log, anything that showed he had existed. But as I scrolled through my contacts, my stomach dropped. His name wasn't there. I searched through my texts. Nothing. I checked social media. No profile. No posts. No old messages. Like he had never existed at all. No, no, no. I whispered, my fingers trembling as I frantically scrolled, desperate for anything that proved I wasn't losing my mind. Then, I found it. A voice recording, labeled simply Artem. My breath caught. I pressed play. At first, there was nothing but static. Then a whisper, a voice, barely audible. Ksenia? Can you hear me? My blood ran ice cold. It was him. His voice. I gripped the phone tighter. Artem. I whispered back, as if he could somehow hear me. The recording continued, his voice distorted, like a transmission from somewhere far away. You have to remember me, please, before it takes you too. The audio cut off. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Something had erased him, and now, it was coming for me. I sat frozen, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Before it takes you too. What did that mean? What was coming for me? I replayed the recording, pressing my ear to the speaker, hoping to catch something I'd missed. Static. A faint whisper. Then, a new sound. Breathing. Not Artem's. Something else. Low, slow, deliberate. My stomach twisted. The audio cut off again, leaving only silence. My hands shook as I put the phone down. I felt lightheaded, like the ground beneath me had cracked open, and I was slipping into something vast and unknowable. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who remembered Artem. I scrolled through my contacts, my pulse racing. My aunt? My cousin? A friend? I hesitated, then called Lena, my childhood best friend. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Hey, Ksenia. What's up? I swallowed hard. Lena, do you remember my brother? A long pause. What? I clenched my teeth. Artem, my brother. We used to play together all the time when we were kids. Please tell me you remember him. Another silence, longer this time. Then, in a careful, uncertain voice, she said, Ksenia, you don't have a brother. A wave of nausea hit me. No, not her too. You do remember, I insisted. We used to play hide and seek in the old park, remember? Artem was the one who always got stuck climbing that stupid tree. You have to remember. Ksenia, she said again, softer now. Are you feeling okay? My breath came in short, panicked gasps. Lena had known Artem. We'd all grown up together. She wasn't just forgetting. Something was making her forget. And soon it would happen to me, too. I hung up without another word. I had to act fast. I went to my closet, grabbing a backpack and stuffing it with essentials. My phone, charger, wallet, anything I could take with me. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here. As I zipped up the bag, I heard something from the hallway. A soft creak, like a door opening. I turned my head slowly. The door to my room was slightly ajar, but I had closed it. A chill ran through me. I took a slow step toward it, my ears straining. Then, a whisper. Ksenia. I froze. It came from the hallway. A voice that sounded almost familiar, but wrong. Too slow. Too stretched. Like someone trying to sound like Artem. I backed away, my heart pounding. The whisper came again, closer this time. You have to forget. The lights flickered. The air in the room grew heavy, like something unseen was pressing against me. I turned, grabbing my phone, trying to dial. Who? The police? Someone? Anyone? But my contacts were gone. Every number, every name, deleted. My hands shook as I backed toward the window, my mind racing. I wasn't just losing Artem. I was losing everything. Then, the door creaked open wider, and something stepped inside. The door swung open wider, revealing nothing. No person.
No shadow.
No movement. Just the yawning darkness of the hallway. But I knew something was there. I could feel it. A pressure in the air, thick and suffocating. Like the moment before a thunderstorm. My phone trembled in my grip. You have to forget. That voice was still in the room, though I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I took a step back. The floorboards creaked beneath me, the only sound in the suffocating silence. Then, a flicker. For the briefest second, the hallway outside my room changed. The walls, the floors, gone. Instead, an endless void stretched out. A space so black and empty that it made my stomach twist. And within that void, figures. Dark, formless things that pulsed and shifted, barely visible through the flickering reality. And at the center of them, a silhouette, a human shape. My breath caught. I knew who it was before I could even see his face. Artem, I whispered. The world snapped back. The hallway was normal again. But the door was now fully open. And there was something standing just beyond it. Not Artem. Not human. Its form was distorted, shifting in and out of focus like a corrupted video. Limbs too long, head tilting at an unnatural angle. And its face, it had no features. Just smooth, empty skin where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should have been. Yet somehow, I knew it was watching me. I staggered backward, slamming into the desk. My bag fell to the floor. The thing stepped forward. I grabbed the first object my hand landed on, a lamp, and hurled it at the doorway. The second it hit, the figure glitched. Its entire body shuddered, flickering violently, distorting like a broken screen. I didn't wait. I bolted. I sprinted down the hallway, past my parents' room, toward the front door. The house felt wrong. Stretched, warped, as if the walls weren't staying in place. I reached the door, grabbed the handle. It wouldn't budge. I yanked, pulled, slammed my shoulder against it. Locked. No. 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 I spun around, my chest heaving. And then I saw them, my parents, standing in the living room, motionless, expressionless, their heads tilted slightly, in perfect unison, their eyes empty. Mom! I choked out. Dad! They didn't move, didn't blink. Then, together, in perfect harmony, they whispered, "Forget." The walls around me rippled. Memories, my childhood, my friends, my own face, flashed through my mind, faster than I could grasp. It was pulling me in, erasing me, just like it erased Artem, just like it had erased so many others before me. I clenched my teeth. No, I would not disappear. I forced myself to remember Artem's voice, his laughter, the sound of him calling my name when we were kids. I held on to it, clung to it with everything I had. I squeezed my eyes shut and screamed, "I remember you." For a single, shattering moment, the world stopped. Then, a horrible, distorted screech erupted through the house. The walls cracked. The floor buckled. The thing in the hallway reeled backward, its form distorting, breaking apart. The pressure in the air lifted like a vacuum had been released. I gasped, stumbling forward. The door behind me suddenly unlocked. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Through the door. Down the steps. Out into the freezing night. I didn't stop. Not until I was far, far away. Not until I knew I had survived. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned. The streets were empty, the world eerily quiet, as if reality itself was holding its breath. My mind was spinning. What had I just seen? What had I just escaped? I stopped under a street lamp, gasping for breath, my hands shaking. My phone was still clutched in my grip. I unlocked it with trembling fingers, scrolling back to the voice recording. Artem's last message. I pressed play. Silence. Then, Ksenia? Are you still there? My breath caught. This wasn't the same recording. The static was gone. His voice was clearer now, more desperate. I don't have much time. My hands went ice cold. It's not just me. There were others before. And there will be more after. A sharp breath. It takes people, Ksenia. Takes them and makes everyone forget. But I don't think it can erase me completely. Not if you still remember. Tears burned in my eyes.
I do remember, he whispered.
I swear. Good, he said. Then his voice grew strained, weaker. It's still here, Ksenia. Watching. Waiting. But I think I found a way to stop it. A deep, ragged breath. You have to hold on to the memories. That's how it works. It erases people by erasing their past. If no one remembers you, you fade away. A pause. But if you remember me, I won't be gone. I pressed a hand over my mouth, trying to stifle the sob that threatened to break free. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. Find the others. The ones like us. The ones who remember. The recording ended. I sat there, staring at my screen, my heart hammering. He was right. I remembered him, and that meant he wasn't completely gone. Maybe I wasn't the only one. Maybe there were others. People who had lost someone. People who had felt the gaps in their lives, the missing memories. And if I could find them, maybe we could bring them back. I wiped my eyes and took a shaky breath. I wasn't alone, and I wouldn't let them take me next. I turned and walked into the darkness, ready to find the truth, before it was too late. I've always hated mirrors. I don't know when it started. Maybe when I was a kid, staring too long at my own reflection and getting that weird, unsettling feeling. Like something wasn't quite right. Like the person in the mirror wasn't really me. I stopped keeping mirrors in my bedroom when I was 16. Even now, at 27, I avoid looking at them for too long. But last week, I noticed something strange. It was just a small thing at first. A delay. I had been brushing my teeth when I caught a flicker of movement in the mirror, just a fraction of a second off. My reflection raised its toothbrush a moment too late. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. I chalked it up to exhaustion and went to bed. The next night, it happened again. I turned my head. My reflection hesitated before doing the same. A cold unease settled in my stomach. I tested it. I lifted my hand, wiggling my fingers. My reflection copied me. But when I stopped, he continued for just a second longer. I staggered back, my pulse hammering. This wasn't just a trick of the eye. Something was wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong. I grabbed my phone and recorded a video of myself moving in front of the mirror. I waved. I turned my head. I blinked. Everything seemed normal through the screen. But when I played the video back, I wasn't smiling when I filmed it. But my reflection was. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the covered mirror across the room. The blanket I had thrown over it did little to ease my nerves. Every creak of the apartment, every shift of the shadows, made my skin crawl. The video played over and over in my head. That smile. A cold, knowing grin that had never been on my face. I wanted to smash the mirror, throw it out. But some part of me was terrified that destroying it would make things worse. So instead, I waited. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I drifted into a restless sleep. I woke up to the sound of glass tapping. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding. The room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the mirror. I sat up slowly, dread coiling in my stomach. The blanket covering the mirror was moving. Something inside was pressing against it. I reached for my phone with trembling hands and turned on the flashlight. The moment the beam hit the mirror, the tapping stopped. I stared, frozen. The blanket was still. The room was silent. For a long moment I didn't move. Then, slowly, cautiously, I stood up and stepped closer. I gripped the edge of the blanket. My breath came in shaky gasps. Then, I pulled it down. And the man in the mirror was not me. The man in the mirror looked exactly like me. Same face, same hair, same tired eyes. But it wasn't me. He was standing too close. His breath fogged the glass, even though I felt nothing on my side. His hands were pressed against the mirror, fingertips splayed out like he was feeling for a way through. And worst of all, he was still smiling. A slow, knowing smile that stretched just a little too wide. I stumbled back, my pulse hammering. What the hell? The thing in the mirror tilted its head. The smile didn't fade. Then, it raised a hand and waved. My stomach twisted. I didn't move. I didn't wave back. I was too scared to blink. A slow, cold dread crawled through my veins as I realized something else. Something even worse. The mirror wasn't reflecting my room correctly anymore. Behind my reflection, the furniture was all wrong. The bed was missing. The walls were a different color. The door was open, but my real bedroom door was shut. I turned to look, just to make sure, then snapped my head back to the mirror. My reflection was gone. The mirror was empty. Nothing but a dim, distorted view of the wrong version of my bedroom. And then, from behind the glass, the door in the reflection creaked open wider. And something inside the mirror world started walking toward me. I couldn't move. Something was coming toward me from inside the mirror. Its footsteps were silent, but I could see the shift in the reflection. The way the darkness in the other room bent and rippled as it approached. I wanted to run, to throw something over the mirror, to smash it, but I was frozen in place, staring in horror. Then, a hand emerged from the darkness. Not mine, not human. It was long, unnaturally thin, fingers stretched like a spider's legs. The skin was pale, almost translucent, veins pulsing beneath the surface. It gripped the edge of the mirror. I sucked in a sharp breath. The thing was trying to pull itself out. A deep, guttural creaking sound filled the air, like wood bending under pressure. The glass began to ripple, distorting like water. And then, it smiled at me again. Not from the mirror. From behind me. A shudder ran down my spine as I felt breath on my neck. My body acted before my mind could catch up. I lunged for the mirror, grabbing the nearest object. A book, a lamp, anything, and swung with all my strength. The glass shattered. A sharp, ear-piercing shriek filled the room, like metal scraping against metal. Then, silence. I staggered backward, chest heaving. The mirror was destroyed. Jagged shards littered the floor, some still stuck in the frame like broken teeth. And the reflection, the wrong version of my room, was gone. Just my real room now. Empty. Normal. I exhaled, running a shaking hand through my hair. My entire body felt cold, drenched in sweat. It was over, right? Then, a soft tap echoed from one of the broken shards on the floor. I looked down. My stomach dropped. In one of the larger shards, the reflection was still moving. And the thing inside the mirror was still watching me. The shard on the floor was still reflecting something. But not my room. Not me. The thing inside the mirror world was still there, crouched in the broken reflection, staring up at me. And it was grinning. My breath came in shallow gasps. My mind screamed at me to look away, to run, but I couldn't. Then, the shard moved. Not slid, not shifted. It twitched, like something was pressing against it from the other side. A low, muffled whisper seeped from the glass. Let me out. I staggered backward, my foot crunching against another shard. The second I stepped on it, I felt a pulse beneath my shoe, like a heartbeat. I jumped back. The reflections inside the scattered glass began shifting. I watched in horror as they combined, piece by piece, forming something whole, something waiting. I turned and ran. I didn't care about the glass cutting my feet. I didn't care about anything except getting away. I reached the door, yanked it open, and slammed it behind me. My breath came in ragged, panicked gasps. For a moment, I stood there, pressing my back against the door, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Nothing. Silence. Had I escaped? I swallowed hard and turned toward the hallway mirror to check. And I froze. The reflection in the hallway mirror wasn't me. It was him, standing there, on my side, smiling. I barely had time to scream before the lights went out. I should have gone straight home that night. I had been working late, drowning in paperwork, and by the time I finally left the office, the streets were nearly empty. A cold wind rattled through the buildings, sending dead leaves skittering across the pavement. I pulled my coat tighter around me and made my way toward my apartment complex, eager to collapse into bed. That's when my neighbor, Mr. Sokolov, called out to me. Back again. I frowned, slowing my steps. What? He gave me a puzzled look. I just saw you come in a few minutes ago. Thought you forgot something. A strange chill ran down my spine. I just got here, I said slowly. Mr. Sokolov's expression faltered. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then shook his head. Maybe I'm just tired. Long day. He chuckled, but there was an unease in his eyes. I forced a smile and nodded, then continued toward the entrance. But my heart was pounding. Someone had come home before me. Someone who looked like me. I took the stairs 2 at a time, an overwhelming sense of dread settling in my gut. My apartment was on the 5th floor, and with each step closer, my body tensed. When I reached my door, I hesitated. Light was spilling out from underneath. I hadn't left any lights on. My hands were slick with sweat as I pulled out my keys. I pressed my ear against the door. Laughter. A voice. My voice. I felt like I was going to be sick. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed my wife's number. The ringing seemed to go on forever. Then, a click. Hey babe, she answered. What's up? I swallowed hard. Anna, where are you right now? A pause. What do you mean? I'm at home. My blood ran cold. Who are you with? I whispered. She laughed softly. Pavel. Who else? I nearly dropped the phone. Because I was Pavel. And I was standing outside the apartment. I gripped the door handle, my knuckles white. Inside, my wife was laughing. And so was he. My pulse thundered in my ears. There was no mistaking it. Anna was inside, laughing, talking, completely at ease. And the man she was with had my voice, had my name, had my life. I had 2 choices. Walk away. Pretend I never heard this. Hope it was all a misunderstanding. Or go inside. I tightened my grip on the door handle and twisted it. Locked. I knocked, my fists shaking. Anna, open the door. Footsteps. Then, Anna's voice warm and confused. Pavel? Why are you knocking? My stomach lurched. Because I'm outside. A long silence. Then I heard something shift inside. Not footsteps. Not movement. A slow, unnatural scraping, like furniture being dragged across the floor. Then, a whisper. Not Anna's. Not mine. Too close to the door. You shouldn't be here. My breath caught. That was my voice. I stumbled backward, my skin crawling. My entire body screamed run. But before I could move, the door unlocked. Slowly it creaked open. Anna stood in the doorway, her brow furrowed in concern. Pavel, what's wrong? I opened my mouth to answer, but my words died in my throat. Because behind her, sitting on the couch, staring directly at me, was me. Same face, same clothes, same tired eyes. And he was smiling. Not at Anna. At me. Hey, my double said, his tone easy, familiar. You look like you've seen a ghost. Couldn't breathe. The man on the couch, my double, tilted his head slightly, studying me. His smile was calm, almost amused, like this was all some kind of joke. But it wasn't. Couldn't be. Anna looked between us, her expression twisting with confusion. Pavel. Her voice was unsteady. What's going on? I forced myself to speak. Anna, step away from him. She flinched at my tone. What? Why? Pavel, you're scaring me. I ignored her. My entire focus was on the thing wearing my face. He didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, fingers laced together, like he had always belonged in my home. Who are you? I asked, my voice hoarse. The smile widened. I'm you, he said simply. A cold shudder ran through me. No, I snapped. You're not. Anna's breathing quickened. She stepped back, looking between us with growing panic. Pavel, what the hell is this? Her voice was cracking. I could see it. The way her hands trembled, the way she kept shifting her gaze, her mind trying to catch up, trying to make sense of the impossible. Then my double stood up, and I froze. His movements, fluid, too perfect, like a marionette mimicking human motion. He took a step toward me, and for the first time I noticed, his feet didn't make a sound. Anna gasped. She had noticed too. The double smiled wider. You resisted for so long, he murmured. But now it's time to switch places. A wave of nausea rolled over me. My skin burned with cold. Somehow I knew. If he touched me, if he took my hand, I would disappear. I would be erased. I lunged for the kitchen. The knife drawer. Something solid, sharp, real. Behind me, I heard the double's voice shift. Deeper, layered, like two voices speaking at once. You don't belong here anymore. I yanked the drawer open, grabbed a knife. A hand gripped my wrist. Ice flooded my veins, and the world snapped into darkness. The second his hand touched mine, a terrible coldness spread through my body. Not normal cold, something worse. Like my very existence was being drained, pulled away, piece by piece. I tried to scream, to pull free, but my voice vanished. The world around me shuddered. The walls of my apartment flickered, like a dying light bulb, and suddenly, I was somewhere else. A vast, empty void. The air was thick and heavy, pressing down on my lungs. My limbs felt weak, distant, like they weren't mine anymore. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not from in front of me, not from behind me, from all around. They never fight for long. My breath hitched. They never win. Then, the void cracked. A splintering, shattering sound, like glass breaking in slow motion. Light rushed in, and I was back. I gasped, stumbling forward. My body burned, my lungs aching like I'd been underwater for too long. The apartment, my apartment, was still there. The couch, the walls, the kitchen. But something was different. It was brighter, cleaner. And then I saw him, my double, standing where I had been just seconds ago. His hand was still outstretched, but now he looked confused, angry. Anna was pressed against the wall, trembling, eyes wide with horror. She saw it too. She saw both of us. Pavel? She whispered. I turned to her. Anna, it's me. But he spoke at the same time. Anna, don't listen to him. Her face twisted, her breathing ragged. She looked at me, then at him. Her hands shook. She couldn't tell us apart. And then my double smiled again. He turned to me, and for the first time his voice dropped the act. You should have let go, he murmured. Then, he lunged. He lunged at me. I barely dodged in time, stumbling back into the kitchen. The knife was still clutched in my hand, my grip slick with sweat. My double moved fast, too fast, like his body wasn't bound by the same rules as mine. Anna screamed. The air warped, the walls of the apartment twisting, like reality itself was bending under the weight of two identical men existing at once. You don't belong here, he hissed. His voice wasn't just mine anymore. It was layered, too many voices speaking at once. I swung the knife. It slashed across his arm. But, no blood. The cut was hollow, like slicing through a reflection. He smiled. And then, he grabbed my throat. My entire body went numb. A deep, crushing cold spread through me, like I was being drained, my very existence leaking away. Memories flashed in my head. My childhood, my life with Anna, every moment that made me who I was, fading. He was taking it all. replacing me. No, no. I forced my arm up, the knife still in my grip, and I stabbed it into the mirror. The one by the hallway. Glass shattered. And he screamed. Not a human scream. Something wrong, something deep, guttural, endless. The moment the mirror broke, his grip on me weakened. His body flickered. He wasn't solid anymore. I staggered back, gasping, watching as his form warped, twisting and unraveling like smoke. His face. My face. Contorted in rage, in pain, in something not human. You shouldn't have fought, he rasped. And then, he was gone. The apartment lurched back to normal. The warping walls, the bending light. Everything settled. Anna was sobbing. I turned to her, my hands shaking. Anna, it's me. She didn't move at first. Then, after a long, painful moment, she nodded. I took her into my arms, holding her tight, my entire body trembling. I had won. I was still me. That night, I smashed every mirror in the apartment. We never spoke of it again. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up, feeling like someone is watching me. And when I glance toward the bathroom mirror, I swear I see something move, even when I'm perfectly still.